Hi, everybody. Welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe because every day on this channel just keeps getting stranger and stranger. I got this email from Lucy Woodstock. Subject line, tornado in Nauvoo, same day. And the day that she's referring to is June 3rd, the same day that there was a tornado in Independence, Missouri, that made it so that my wife and I had to take shelter in the Independence Visitor Center because we couldn't get home in time. On that same day, there's a tornado near Nauvoo. Okay, in the email, hey Jared, we are in Nauvoo, and my brother-in-law was at the temple parking lot getting my nephew and saw it over the Mississippi. Just thought you'd find this interesting. Yeah, to say the least. Thank you so much for the email. It's even more interesting to me because yesterday, for the first time, I went to Nauvoo. I have a lot of pioneer ancestry that lived there, and it was my first time. I took a couple videos, and I'm gonna post them here on my new channel called Explore Church Sites. I got the first one up, the Nauvoo, Illinois Temple Grounds, so make sure to check that out and subscribe. But I'm glad that it happened in this order because now I can kind of picture what that would have looked like looking across the Mississippi. Okay, so I found this article. This is 6KWQC. Freight train derails in severe storm. Okay, so I think that this right here is the site of the tornado. Here's the Mississippi. And you can see that just right across the way, you have Nauvoo. All right, let's read a little bit of this. Lee County emergency management officials say an empty freight train was derailed in Tuesday night's storms. A BNSF train was blown over by the storm near 239th Avenue, officials said, northwest and across the Mississippi River from Nauvoo. Okay, so this article doesn't say that there was a tornado, but when you go to the NOAA's Storm Prediction Center and these special reports that they have, you can see the little red dot right here. The red dots indicate a tornado. Here's the one near Nauvoo. Here's the one in Independence, Missouri. And you can get the details right here. It turns out, by the way, that there's some interesting details about the tornado in Independence. Starting with the fact that it wasn't just one, there were two. Up until today, I didn't know that there were two. I thought that there was just one. But you have these two. We're going to talk about these in just a second. And then here's the one that we're talking about in Lee County, Iowa. It says 4 miles northeast of New Boston. And then if you look at the comments, it says southwest of Fort Madison. So if we go to Google Earth, I put a little place marker here where I think the tornado was. Here's New Boston. So this is northeast of New Boston. And here's Fort Madison. And it said it was southwest. So yeah, it was in this area right here. A tornado confirmed. And then you have this freight train that was knocked over. And then here's Nauvoo, and the temple's over here somewhere right here. So it is a pretty good view of the Mississippi from the temple and the land that's across the way. Okay, that is really, really interesting. By the way, I don't know if you ever saw this video. I actually did a couple of them, but sometime last year, there was this other wind event in Nauvoo. It was a derecho, it's like hurricane force winds that are inland, and it affects a large area. And there was a miracle that took place with this youth group that was doing a trek. And I'm going to put this video in the description box below. You may want to go check that out. But this was just last year. And now we have this that we're talking about with this tornado. Okay, so we have that. Now let's come over here to Independence. I checked the update on this story today for the first time. This is KMBC 9 News. National Weather Service confirms tornado struck Independence, Missouri. Now, up until today, all I had heard is that there was a tornado that was near Independence, that it was more like in Raytown. Um, but like basically right on the city limits of Independence. And so, that caught my attention, of course, but I thought that there was just the one. No, there were two. And one of them was in Independence. Take a look at this screenshot right here, or where I paused on this video. This is where the tornado was. It went over this business called Temple Engineering Incorporated. If you didn't catch my video where I first talked about this tornado, or I guess these tornadoes, plural, come at a very interesting time because Community of Christ had its 2025 World Conference, which it only holds every 3 years. This time, it was 2 years since the last one, and I think that's because they had this new prophet president that they just ordained. In fact, here's a picture of her. Her name is Stacy D. Cram. She's the first female prophet president of Community of Christ. I wish her well. Hopefully she'll do a good job for her church. And I have nothing against Community of Christ, but we know that the land that's over there, not just the temple lot. Let's go over to Independence now. Not just the temple lot that's owned by Church of Christ temple lot, but also the land that surrounds it would be needed for the 24 temple complex. A lot of people just think about, oh, we need the temple lot, and that's true, but it's actually this whole area. The Independence Visitor Center was built to be one of those temples, but the area would include where the Community of Christ Temple currently is, and the auditorium, and some of these other places. Okay? So, on the day, during a conference when this is taking place, where they have their first female prophet president, and from some of the, I don't know if you would call them talks or speeches that they were giving during the conference, I watched a few of those. It felt like they were alluding to the fact that things are going to change in the future. There was one speaker that was talking about, yeah, it's nice to have a gathering place, but it's not really what's important. And we have, this future, God's calling us to, I could have been reading into it, but it really doesn't seem like they care about these historic sites anymore. Neither in Independence nor in Nauvoo. When we purchased the Kirtland Temple from them, they sold us the sites that were in Nauvoo, the sites that I visited yesterday. Joseph Smith's homestead and the mansion and the Nauvoo house and the red brick store. I don't think that they really care about it anymore. They're going a different direction. So with that in mind, okay, when we're thinking about Temple Land, while their conference was going on, there was a tornado that went over a company called Temple Engineering Incorporated in Independence, Missouri. Let's read some of the details here. The National Weather Service says a tornado struck Independence, Missouri during the height of strong storms passing through the Kansas City area Tuesday. The National Weather Service rating the tornado an EF1 with estimated peak winds up to 100 miles per hour. Survey team said several healthy trees were snapped, which supported the EF1 rating. Officials with the City of Independence said the area was quote-unquote walloped during Tuesday's storm. Quote, a huge thank you to our Independence Power and Light crews who worked around the clock to restore power to 99% of the more than 2,600 customers affected at the peak of the outage, the city said in a post on its Facebook page. Crews also dealt with broken poles and down lines. Okay, so there was a lot of damage from what I understand during the entire event, both between the tornadoes and the overall storm. Independence was the worst hit. Okay, and again, right here, it seems ground zero for one of the tornadoes at Temple Engineering Incorporated. I wanted to find out a little bit more about this company, and there's a couple interesting things here. So they have a new website coming soon. Temple Engineering, your trusted partner in railroad chemical solutions. Which, that's another weird little connection. Does it mean anything? I don't know. I'm not saying that it does, but we just read about the tornado near Nauvoo that knocked over a freight train, an empty freight train. But it knocked it over. And here we have a tornado in Independence that hits this company that it says at Temple Engineering, we've proudly led the way in specialized chemical solutions for the railroad industry since 2003. As a certified woman-owned business, which kind of fits this theme that we're talking about, we combine innovation, and I'm not going to read the rest of that, but just these little things. I feel like if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, you can make these connections and you can tell that there's a message in this for those that are watching. Okay, and then there's this. This is 41 KSHB, Kansas City. National Weather Service says EF1 and EF0 tornadoes hit parts of Kansas City area Tuesday. So they have these graphics here that show the track of the tornadoes. So here's the one that I didn't know about. Here's downtown Independence, and right here's where the Temple lot would be. This is relatively close. So here's one. This is the EF1, the stronger one. And then you had this one, and this is the one that I was tracking that is over by, that was over by the two stadiums. Arrowhead Stadium for the Kansas City Chiefs and Kauffman Stadium for the Kansas City Royals. Let's go to Google Earth and zoom out. So, okay, so here's the Temple lot area. Zoom out. Over here, you have the Temple Engineering Company tornado or incorporated tornado. And then just here to the southwest, you have the Arrowhead tornado. They're like surrounding, the Temple lot in a sense. The Temple lot's kind of in the middle or between both of them. So interesting. All right, let's go back to the article. Touching down at 2:35 p.m., the tornado was on the ground until 2:44 p.m., moving east. I have those times highlighted because that was right when they were having a what would be the equivalent of like a session, like a conference session in the auditorium, which is like their conference center. So from 2 to 4:30 p.m., legislative session, auditorium conference chamber. Session will consider world conference legislation, alternative common consent statement on nonviolence. So in other words, imagine that you were there attending this event, just like we would general conference, and the tornado sirens go off. Conference was interrupted. You'd have to take shelter. Just imagine it from their point of view. That must have been a once in a lifetime type thing. Like, yes, there are tornadoes here in the Midwest. That's not a secret. But I don't know if there's any other time that their conference, which is only held every 3 years, has been interrupted with a tornado. These are the things I think that you have to consider when all these things combine and just in this specific type of way. Okay, let's go back. There's pictures and stuff. LaDawn, which is the reporter. LaDawn also went to the Truman Sports Complex where an EF0 was reported. And there's this interesting detail here. When LaDawn was at the complex, she heard from Kauffman Stadium employees who were present for the storm. Quote, "This is my 8th day at work here, and what an introduction," Camden Love said. We were up on the top there on the 7th floor when the first line of wind and rain hit, and you could see it coming across the parking lot. I just think that's interesting with all the 7s that we talk about on this channel. Just a little detail. But, okay, and then this all is taking place, these tornadoes in Nauvoo, and the one in Independence and the other one really close to Independence. These 3 tornadoes are happening within this context where you have other things going on. So you had this Canadian wildfire smoke that started on the first day of their conference. It obscured the sun, darkened it. When it was close to sunset, the sun got pretty red. It was really pretty. But yeah, this Canadian wildfire smoke. And we haven't seen this since 2023 when we had that other big event where it covered not only the continental United States, but also it drifted across the Atlantic Ocean and was over the skies of Lisbon, Portugal, and Madrid, Spain. And seems like something similar is happening this year. I don't know if it's going to be as big. 2023 was a record-breaking year for Canadian wildfires, but we'll see what happens this year. Okay, so yeah, that was going on throughout the entire conference. The whole, like from Friday to Friday, you had this Canadian wildfire smoke. Okay, here's a Fox 4 article that talks about it. And then on the day that Stacey D. Cram was ordained the new prophet president of Community of Christ, you had this Aurora event. And these aren't very common. The Aurora extended all the way down into states like Texas and Florida, California. It went to the Gulf Coast. Okay. I wasn't able to see it from where I'm at. I didn't go out to the country to try and take a picture. Just maybe I should have, but I couldn't see it probably because of the city lights. But if you go to my Facebook, if it would just stay where I had it. If you go to my Facebook, I have this post that I shared from Robert Reynolds, who took some pictures just a little bit north of Kansas City. It was also seen, and here's a video of it too. It was also seen in Utah. Here's some pictures from Utah from Matt Johnson, KSL. So it's not very often that the Aurora comes down that far. The only time I've ever experienced it was last year when it happened 2 times. And that first time, it was not long after the Kirtland Temple was sold to us from Community of Christ. That's why when I see this event happening on the same day that she becomes the new prophet president, and when I see, of all things, this tornado that hits Independence during World Conference, and it hits a place called Temple Engineering, it may just be a signal that the Lord is working on something and giving us a heads up. I wouldn't be surprised. And then on top of that, I'm not really including it right now on my spreadsheet called Timeline Second Coming, but on that same day, there was that large attack on Russia from Ukraine. It was a big drone attack, and they took out a large number of nuclear bombers. They were calling it, or they've been calling it, Russia's Pearl Harbor. I'm still waiting to see if there's like any significant development as a result of that. I know that Russia has hit back pretty hard. That's some of the news coming out today. But anyway, I added these events to my Second Coming spreadsheet. This is a spreadsheet that's not trying to predict the future and trying to predict what's supposed to happen. We're watching what is actually happening and just taking note and trying to remember things. It's been a crazy year. Talking about wildfires, Israel, on its 77th birthday, had its largest wildfire in that country's history. And then this year started out, from my point of view, the first big thing was the Pacific Palisades fire in Los Angeles. That ended up being multiple fires. And that was an interesting fire because it affected a large Jewish population. So we've had these 2 wildfires that have affected a large number of Jews, one here in the US, one in Israel itself, on Israel's 77th birthday. Oh, and by the way, the Los Angeles fires started on the 7th of January. And then over here in the New Jerusalem, Independence, Missouri, we have these things going on with this church that has some land that is important for the future. So okay, well, that's it. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.